F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, first published in 1925, is one of the defining works of American literature. Set during the prosperity and excess of the Jazz Age, the novel follows the mysterious millionaire Jay Gatsby and his obsessive pursuit of Daisy Buchanan, as observed by narrator Nick Carraway. Through Gatsby's dream, Fitzgerald examines both the promise and the darker realities of American success. Fitzgerald's literary style is lyrical, elegant, and highly symbolic, combining poetic imagery with sharp social criticism. Recurring symbols such as the green light and the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg deepen the novel's exploration of desire and disillusionment. The novel explores themes of the American dream, wealth, social class, love, obsession, identity, illusion, and the impossibility of recapturing the past. The Great Gatsby remains important for its powerful critique of materialism and its timeless examination of the distance between our dreams and the realities we cannot escape. The story starts with Nick Carraway looking back on the summer of 1922, when he moves from the Midwest to New York to work in the bond business. Nick presents himself as someone trained by his father not to judge others too quickly, though he also sees himself as morally serious. He rents a modest house in West Egg, Long Island, a place known for newly rich people who have money but not the old social polish of East Egg. Next door to him stands the enormous mansion of Jay Gatsby, a man whose name is surrounded by rumor. Across the bay in East Egg live Nick's cousin Daisy Buchanan and her husband Tom. Tom is wealthy, forceful, and arrogant, a former Yale acquaintance of Nick's who carries himself like a man used to power. At dinner with Tom and Daisy, Nick also meets Jordan Baker, a cool and bored professional golfer. The evening reveals the trouble beneath the Buchanan's elegance. Tom talks about racist ideas from a book he has been reading, and then he leaves the room to take a phone call. Jordan tells Nick the caller is Tom's mistress in New York. When Nick returns home that night, he sees Gatsby for the first time. Gatsby stands alone on his lawn, reaching his arms toward the dark water. Nick looks across the bay and sees only a small green light at the end of a distant dock. The image stays with him, though he does not yet understand what it means. Tom soon takes Nick into the city and stops in the gray industrial wasteland between Long Island and Manhattan, a place called the Valley of Ashes. There, under the faded billboard eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, Tom introduces Nick to Myrtle Wilson, his mistress, and the wife of George Wilson, a poor garage owner. Tom brings Myrtle to an apartment he keeps in New York for the affair. A drunken party follows with Myrtle's sister Catherine and the McKees, a shallow couple from downstairs. The scene grows ugly as Myrtle becomes louder and more reckless. When she repeatedly says Daisy's name, Tom strikes her and breaks her nose. Nick is both repelled and fascinated by the wealth, carelessness, and moral disorder around him. He is soon drawn into Gatsby's world as well. Gatsby throws huge parties every weekend, filling his mansion with music, liquor, food, strangers, and rumors. Most guests do not know Gatsby personally. They speculate that he was a spy, an Oxford man, or even a murderer. Nick attends one of these parties by invitation and eventually meets Gatsby without realizing it at first. Gatsby is young, polished, formal, and strangely separate from the chaos he hosts. At the party, Gatsby asks to speak privately with Jordan. Later, Jordan hints that she has learned something extraordinary. Nick becomes increasingly curious about Gatsby, especially because Gatsby does not behave like his guests. He does not drink, does not lose control, and seems to watch the party from a distance. Nick also begins a relationship with Jordan, even though he recognizes that she is dishonest and careless in her own way. One day, Gatsby takes Nick to lunch in New York and tells him a highly polished story about his past. He claims to come from a wealthy Midwestern family, to have studied at Oxford, traveled widely, collected jewels, hunted big game, and earned military honors in the war. Nick is skeptical, though Gatsby produces a medal and a photograph as evidence. In the city, Gatsby introduces Nick to Meyer Wolfsheim, a shady underworld figure connected to organized crime, and rumored to have fixed the 1919 World Series. Nick begins to suspect that Gatsby's money may come from illegal dealings. Jordan finally explains Gatsby's secret. Years earlier in Louisville, Gatsby and Daisy fell in love before he left for the war. Daisy later married Tom, but on the night before her wedding, she broke down after receiving a letter from Gatsby. Gatsby has bought his mansion in West Egg because it sits across the bay from Daisy's house. The green light Nick saw is at the end of Daisy's dock. Gatsby has been throwing parties not for pleasure, but in the hope that Daisy might wander in one night. Too nervous to approach her directly, he asks Nick to invite Daisy to tea and let Gatsby appear there by surprise. Nick agrees. Gatsby becomes intensely nervous, sending someone to cut Nick's grass and filling the house with flowers. When Daisy arrives, Gatsby first disappears, then comes in awkwardly from the rain. The reunion begins painfully, with Gatsby nearly overwhelmed by embarrassment. But after Nick leaves them alone, the atmosphere changes. When he returns, Daisy is crying with happiness, and Gatsby is glowing. Gatsby then takes Daisy and Nick to his mansion and shows Daisy the world he has built for her. She is especially moved by his shirts, weeping as she sees the beauty and abundance of his possessions. Nick senses that Gatsby has dreamed of Daisy for so long that no real person could fully match the ideal he has created. Nick later explains Gatsby's true background. He was born James Gatz on a poor farm in North Dakota. As a young man, he rejects that identity and reinvents himself as Jay Gatsby. He meets Dan Cody, a wealthy copper magnate, and becomes his assistant aboard a yacht. From Cody, Gatsby learns the language and appearance of wealth, though he loses the inheritance Cody intended for him. After that, Gatsby dedicates himself to becoming rich enough to match the dream he has imagined. Tom eventually visits Gatsby's house and becomes suspicious. He sees that Gatsby knows Daisy, and he looks down on Gatsby's manners and social background. Soon afterward, Tom and Daisy attend one of Gatsby's parties. Daisy dislikes the vulgarity of the crowd, and Tom suspects Gatsby's wealth comes from bootlegging. Gatsby is disappointed because he wants Daisy to reject Tom completely and return to the love they had before the war. Nick warns him that the past cannot simply be repeated, but Gatsby insists that it can. As Gatsby's affair with Daisy grows more serious, he stops giving parties and replaces his servants with people connected to Wolfsheim to prevent gossip. On a brutally hot summer day, Nick goes to the Buchanan's house, where Gatsby and Jordan are also present. Gatsby is startled by the reality of Daisy's young daughter, as if the child proves that Daisy has lived a life apart from him. Daisy and Gatsby cannot hide their feelings, and Tom realizes what is happening. Daisy suggests they all go to New York, and Tom seizes the chance for a confrontation. On the way, Tom, Nick, and Jordan stop at Wilson's garage. George Wilson has discovered that Myrtle is unfaithful, though he does not know with whom, and he plans to take her west. Tom sees that Wilson is suffering from the same betrayal Tom himself fears. In the city, the group rents a suite at the Plaza Hotel. There, Tom attacks Gatsby, questioning his Oxford story and exposing his criminal business connections. Gatsby demands that Daisy say she never loved Tom. Daisy cannot do it. She admits she loved Gatsby, but she also loved Tom. As the confrontation unfolds, Gatsby loses the certainty he has built his life around. Tom, confident that he has won, sends Daisy back to Long Island with Gatsby in Gatsby's yellow car. Nick, Jordan, and Tom follow later. On the road through the Valley of Ashes, they discover that Myrtle Wilson has been killed by a car. Witnesses say the car was yellow. Nick realizes Gatsby's car struck her. Later, Gatsby tells Nick the truth. Daisy was driving, but he will take the blame. He waits outside Daisy's house to make sure Tom does not hurt her. Nick looks inside and sees Tom and Daisy sitting together calmly, already drawing back into the protection of their marriage and wealth. Gatsby remains outside alone, still devoted to a dream that is slipping away. The next morning, Nick visits Gatsby. Gatsby has stayed outside Daisy's house until dawn, but nothing happens. Nick suggests he leave Long Island, but Gatsby refuses to abandon Daisy. He tells Nick more about their love in Louisville, how he lied about his background to seem worthy of her, and how deeply he believed she would wait for him. Daisy, however, chose Tom because his wealth and social position were secure. Before Nick leaves for work, he tells Gatsby that he is worth more than the whole crowd of careless rich people around him. Meanwhile, George Wilson spends the night grieving and searching for meaning. He tells Michaelis that he confronted Myrtle about her sin and believes the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg are the eyes of God. Convinced that the driver of the yellow car was Myrtle's lover, Wilson sets out for revenge. Tom tells him Gatsby owns the car. Wilson goes to Gatsby's mansion, finds Gatsby floating in his pool, shoots him, and then kills himself. Nick returns to West Egg and finds Gatsby dead. Afterward, reporters and gossip seekers swarm the mansion, inventing stories about Gatsby and the tragedy. Nick tries to arrange a proper funeral, but the people who filled Gatsby's parties vanish. Tom and Daisy leave without a forwarding address. Wolfsheim refuses to come. Klipspringer, who practically lived at Gatsby's house, calls only to ask for his tennis shoes. In the end, almost no one attends the funeral except Nick, Gatsby's father Henry Gatz, a few servants, and a bespectacled man nicknamed Owl Eyes. Gatsby's father is proud of his son and shows Nick a childhood schedule Gatsby wrote, full of plans for self-improvement. The schedule reveals that Gatsby's dream of transforming himself began long before Daisy, though Daisy became the perfect symbol of everything he wanted. Nick grows disgusted with the East and its carelessness. He ends his relationship with Jordan and prepares to return to the Midwest. Before leaving, Nick runs into Tom in New York. Tom admits that he told Wilson Gatsby owned the yellow car, and he insists Gatsby deserved what happened. Nick realizes that Tom and Daisy are careless people who damage others and retreat behind their money, leaving someone else to clean up the wreckage. This understanding confirms Nick's decision to leave. On his final night in West Egg, Nick visits Gatsby's empty mansion and looks out toward the water. He imagines Long Island before the houses, before the parties, before the corruption of wealth. He thinks about the green light, which once represented Daisy to Gatsby, and beyond her, the dream of a perfect future. Gatsby believes so deeply in that future that he cannot see it has already passed beyond reach. Nick understands that people keep rowing toward their dreams, even as the current pulls them backward into the past.